As you can see, we've been on a bit of a plant haul recently, with most of these plants being new to the collection. However, we've not broken the bank in buying them. So what we'd like to do in this video is share our tips of how you can grow your indoor jungle for less. When considering the prices that I've paid for these plants, I'll also be thinking about the wholesale price I would have expected the retailer to have paid. I'm quite familiar with wholesale pricing for plants, as I used to run a houseplant shop. I've also done a little bit of background research before the video. So whether you're buying your first plant or you're growing your collection, hopefully the tips that we can share in this video will help you to find the plants that you're after for the best possible price. If you're lucky enough to have a local independent houseplant shop near to you, then visit them first. The benefits of local independent shops is that they'll likely have a greater selection of plants, greater plant knowledge, be able to give you one-to-one customer service, and have reasonable prices. We were able to get hold of a few things that we've wanted for our collection, such as this begonia silver breeze, which was only $7.99, quite a big plant, as you can see, in a 12cm pot. This monstera adansonii, as well as, again, really full, healthy plant. You can see lots of new leaves on the way there. I mean, that one's actually growing through a leaf, so I might need to help that out so that it doesn't split that leaf. But that was only $12.99. And also, one that I've been after for such a long time, I managed to find a little one. As you can see, the Alocasia silver dragon. And this was just $8.99. It is a smaller plant, but one of the benefits of buying small is that you get a better price, and this will eventually grow as well. Again, this has new leaves on the way in the middle too. So now just thinking about the potential wholesale prices and the markup. With this begonia, for example, $7.99 at retail, I would have expected to pay something like £2 to £3 for this at wholesale price, depending on obviously how many were bought at once and the wholesaler or distributor that's being used. So again, not a bad markup, and of course that markup needs to be there. They need to make money to stay in business. Same with this one as well, similar markup to what I would have expected. So this was $12.99, and actually as a retail price, that is very reasonable. I've seen these for anywhere between $9.99 and $14.99. And then lastly, the silver dragon, Alocasia silver dragon as well. This was only $8.99. With this one, again, I would expect to see a wholesale price of maybe even £3 or £4 for this sort of thing. These are a little bit more unusual, so would often have a higher price even at wholesale. If you don't have a houseplant shop local to you, you could try buying your plants online. There are a growing number of websites dedicated to houseplants, offering a wide variety from everyday plants up to the rarer and more tropical varieties. While some of these stores might be linked to retail shops, many are purely online. The benefit of this is online stores often have a greater variety of plants available. While they might need a warehouse for the plants, if they don't have retail premises, this might mean that their overheads are lower. Hopefully this also means lower plant prices for you. So as before, we've got some example plants for you, all of them quite similar for this demonstration. We've got a Philodendron scandens or Heartleaf Philodendron here in a 12cm pot. We've also got this golden pothos, devil's ivy, or its proper name Epipremnum aureum. You can see really lovely leaves there. You can see where it gets its name, the green leaves with the golden variegation. And we've also got a different variety of the Epipremnum aureum, which is Marble Queen, so you can see a much greater variegation on there. This one's quite a bit bigger as well, although it's in the same size pot. This one has grown a bit, and it's got lots of new leaves on the way too. And as you'll see, the slight difference with this is the leaves have a whiter variegation compared to the golden variegation on the golden pothos. So with these, you'd generally expect similar prices for the Philodendron scandens and the golden pothos. Somewhere between $7.99 and $9.99, although you can find them cheaper if you shop around. The cheapest we found this one was actually £4.50, which is an amazing price. Very nearly bought more, although we've already got them, so we didn't. Same with these, you could pay a little bit less, maybe $6.99, but equally you could pay more depending on where you're shopping. The Marble Queen is sometimes a little bit more expensive. I've seen this up to £13.99, but that is definitely on the higher end. You can get it for around a similar price, maybe £8 to £10 there as well. The interesting thing which we've noticed in a later section of the video is supermarket pricing often is very good. However, with these ones we have actually found they are more expensive to buy them in person in a supermarket as opposed to buying them online, where you'll find them cheaper. In supermarkets I've seen these around £10 to £12 as opposed to the 8 to 10 mark. You'd probably pay similar if you were to buy them in person in a dedicated plant shop, which is good. So again, if you do have one local, then shop there and support local. Looking at these wholesale, generally you can get them at the same sort of price wholesale, about £2.50 to £3.50 a plant. So similar to the other plants that we've used for demo purposes, not too much of a markup. Just be wary of obviously paying too much for the same type of plant. As we said earlier, a plant is a plant. Whether you get this from a supermarket or buy it online or a dedicated plant shop, it's still a philodendron scandens. So the lowest price you can pay, obviously the better for your bank balance and the more plants that you can buy. So there is an obvious downside of buying plants online, is that you can't actually select the plant yourself. So unlike if you were shopping in person, you could check the growth, get a larger plant for your money, make sure there aren't any pests, make sure that it's a healthy plant. Whereas when you're buying online, you've really got to trust that whoever's selecting your order will select a decent plant for you, and that you get what you're expecting when you get it in the post. With that in mind, of course, with online selling, it's distance selling, so there are buyer protections in place. If you do happen to buy something and what you receive is not what you're expecting, you can raise that with the retailer, and they do have obligations to try and resolve that for you, whether that's with a replacement or with a refund. Another benefit of online plant shops is you can often get rarer types of plants through them. Some may even be able to offer a sourcing service, so if you are after a particular variety of plant that you can't find elsewhere, those that do sell a broader range of varieties and rarer or tropical plants, you could reach out to them to see if they can get one from their wholesalers. So the next one we'll look at is garden centres, probably the next obvious choice after local plant shops, another larger plant shop. But there is a slight difference between the big chains and independent garden centres. So you'll often find very reasonable prices in the independent garden centres, whereas big chains tend to have a much higher markup. So generally, knowing what I know now, whereas what I would have done previously is potentially purchase plants from the big chain garden centres, now that I know what the wholesale prices they pay for them, it does put me off a little bit in paying the prices that they sell some of their plants for. Whereas I don't tend to notice that too much in the more independent garden centres. Now that's not to say that you can't find good deals at big chain garden centres. We found this Nephelopus exultata, or Boston fern. As you can see, it's a really big healthy plant, and we definitely bought it at this size and at the price of £6.99. Thought it was really reasonable. At wholesale I would have expected to pay something like £2 to £3 for this, but given the buying power that a large chain garden centre would have, they probably got it for a little bit less. So while they might have had a greater markup on it, it didn't affect the retail price too much. The other benefit of large chain garden centres is that they often have promotional offers. So you can often get things buy one get one free, half price for example. Alternatively, they also sell a lot of plants off when they look a little sad. Maybe they just need a water or they just need repotting, but you can often get good deals that way as well as. Now conversely, there are also some plants that are massively overpriced for whatever reason that might be. And we've got a Monstera deliciosa that we've actually potted up ourselves, but just for comparison purposes, as we're talking about large garden centres, a Monstera at this sort of size in a decorative pot would likely be between £30 and £50, which is actually very expensive for what it is compared to what we've paid for this from different retailers, which we'll cover in the supermarket section shortly. On the other hand, if you do have a local garden centre, have a look and see if they've got any houseplants on offer. You will likely find better prices than the big chain garden centres, as they have more independence over what their markups are. This Raphiodora tetrasperma was just $19.99 on a promotional offer at the time, usually $39.99. As you can see, if I can lift it up carefully, it is quite a large plant. Again, really healthy, lots of new leaves coming out on top. And something like that, while it was on a promotional offer at $19.99, I would actually expect to pay something like that, between maybe $10 and $15 for that at a wholesale price. Another fantastic find at our local garden centre is this alocasia. I believe it's a portadora, just a very young one, so it's still quite small. However, as you can see the size of those leaves, really big, beautiful glossy leaves there, and lots of new ones on the way, so a nice healthy plant. That was only $6.99. Just considering what that might have been at wholesale, again possibly £2 to £3, so hardly much of a markup there either. I was in two minds of whether or not to buy any plants. As you can see, I've got plenty of plants. However, as soon as I saw this and the price, this was straight in the basket. And lastly, these African violets, or St. Paulias. These were just £3 each. They were on a promotional offer, 2 for 6, usually $3.99 each. But even those at wholesale, I'd expect to cost maybe £1 to £1.50. So reasonable markup again, which means a reasonable price for the buyer, in this case me. One of the other benefits of going to a garden centre, whether it is big chain or a local one, is that they'll often have better plant knowledge than you might find in other retailers such as supermarkets and home stores, which we'll touch on in a moment. So it might not be quite as in-depth as what a local independent plant shop might have, but they should still have a reasonable understanding of what they're selling and what the care requirements are if you've got any questions. So it seems like a natural progression to go from garden centres to homeware or hardware stores, which sometimes in themselves will have a garden centre or a small houseplant section. We actually picked up these two amazing plant bargains at one of our local shops, Wilko in the UK. So we've got this alocasia here with big leaves, very healthy, quite a large plant in a 12cm pot, and this was only £5 at retail. And this Ficus elastica Abidjan, as you can see, it's got lovely dark glossy leaves and a bright red new one on the way there. This was only £3 or £3.50 even. Thinking about what they might have been at wholesale and what the markup might have been, I can't actually see that they've made that much money on them, if any at all. So the Ficus elastica Abidjan, I would expect to pay anything between maybe £1.50 to £3 at wholesale. Again, it does depend on the buying power. If they've got good buying power, which I imagine they do, they probably did get a good price for it. But still, there isn't that much room for markup up to £3.50. And then with the alocasia, which was £5 at retail, I would have thought that would have been somewhere between £2.50 and £4 at wholesale as well as. So there, not much room for markup there either. While you might get great prices in homeware and hardware stores on plants, the plant knowledge of the staff may not be the same as what you'd get in a garden centre, and definitely not in a local independent plant shop. However, as they are large chains, they'll often have promotional offers, as well as having reduced plants where the plants maybe need a little bit of extra care, so keep an eye out for any extra plant bargains that you can find in your local home store. So the next one we'll look at is buying plants from supermarkets. As you'll notice, we're slowly moving away from dedicated plant retailers to more generalist retailers that perhaps sell plants. As you might have noticed, supermarkets are expanding their range, jumping on the houseplant bandwagon, and you'll see plants popping up around the produce and flower sections. So we're quite lucky in the UK that we've got a number of big chain supermarkets that have all got a range of houseplants available, and it's often where I find some of my greatest plant bargains, as you'll see in just a second. So the first one we'll start with is this begonia maculata. As you can see, amazing leaves there with the markings and wonderful red colour on the back. This is in a 12cm pot, and this was only £3. We've picked this, these up before at £2.50 as well, which we thought were lucky finds at that price. And even at £3 as well, this is a fantastic price. At wholesale, I'd expect that to be even sort of £3 to £4 at wholesale. So clearly the supermarkets are making the most of their buying power to get those at a better price, or even selling them at a loss if they're just sort of an added product to bring people in. The reason this is also such a great bargain is if I were to buy this elsewhere, these go for anything between maybe £8 to £12. Usually see them at £9.99 in other plant retailers. So of course we had to buy it for £3. And then this one, I can get it in shops, it's quite a large one. Peperomia scandens variegata. Nice big plant, lots of trails, very healthy. This again was just £3 in the same lot as this, so I think the supermarkets have bought a mixed lot of 12cm plants, 12cm potted plants. The next one that I've got is from a different supermarket, and this one actually came in the decorative pot that it's in, as you can see. I think that's a 13cm pot with a 12cm, or possibly a 14cm, with a 12cm potted Calathea corona inside. Again, nice healthy plant, really lovely markings, new leaves on the way, another new one there as well. And this, with the pot, plant and pot, was just £7. Thinking about what that might have been if they were bought separately, even separately at wholesale, the pot maybe £1 to £3, and the plant even itself £2.50 to £4.50 at wholesale. So again, really thinking about how they've managed to sell these two together at £7. I can't see that they've made much of a markup on that. But as we've already said, they have greater buying power, so it could be that they've just got them at a significantly reduced price. As with hardware stores and homeware stores, it's very much luck of the draw as to what plants you might find in the supermarket. Luckily, we're there often when we do our weekly or fortnightly shop, so check out the plant section next time you're there and see what plant bargains you might find. See if you can find any like the ones that we've got. Now, we did also say that we'd come back to the Monstera deliciosa plant that we've got just here, so I'm just going to bring it down again so that you can see how large it is, the sort of size terracotta pot that it's in, and the size of the plant. So these were actually from a local supermarket. So the Monstera plant itself was £10 from one supermarket, and there's actually 3 or 4 Monstera plants in the pot that it came in, so we've just kept them all together and potted them up in this larger terracotta pot. The terracotta pot was £4.50, and as you can see, it's a solid, very heavy terracotta pot. Well, it's very heavy with all the soil in, and the plant was just £4.50. So purchasing those two together and then using the moss pole and the soil that I had already at home, this has effectively cost me £14.50 to make. Whereas if I were to buy this from a garden centre, as I said at the start, this would go for anywhere between £30 and £50. And I've definitely seen them in a Monstera plants in a wicker type decorative pot or decorative basket for £44.99. So if you can buy the separate elements yourself as well and then pot plants up yourself, that's another great way to save money rather than buying pre-potted plants in decorative pots, particularly from garden centres, because that adds a massive premium to the price that you're paying. Another way that you can grow your plant collection for less is by using individual sellers on selling platforms such as Etsy or eBay. There's a growing number of these selling established plants as well as cuttings, both rooted and unrooted. There is a greater risk with this, as you will be buying from individuals rather than retailers. However, many of these platforms such as Etsy and eBay do have buyer protections in place should you receive something that you weren't expecting or not what you paid for. This may be a good way to get hold of rarer plants, as many sellers will be offering cuttings rather than established plants, so can sell them at a lower price. With cuttings, there's no guarantee that they will take root, or even if they are rooted before being sent to you, they need to survive the postage process and then establish once you pot them up. Obviously, you need to factor in what risk you're willing to take and what you're willing to pay for such plants. We're actually giving this a try, so we'll probably make a future video on the results. We've just purchased a mystery box from Poppet Plants on Etsy, although other sellers are available and do sell similar things. So we're expecting 4 cuttings of rare type plants in the post shortly. Keep an eye out for a future video where we discuss what we got and whether they were successful. Our penultimate tip is to buy small. So if you're looking to add varieties to your houseplant collection, one good way to do this for less is to buy smaller plants, particularly of those varieties that do get a lot more expensive as they get bigger, and then that way you can look after them, nurture them, and help them grow. So another example of where we've bought small is this little syngonium. I'd need to double check what type of syngonium it is, but we actually bought this in a small 5cm nursery pot, I think it was. Very, very tiny, and it was just £2.99 or 3 for £8, so we saved a little bit of money there. And we potted it up into this 12cm pot, and it's already grown quite a lot since it's been potted up. It does have quite a way until it starts to fill out the pot, but if we were to buy this as a larger plant, as a plant in a 12cm pot, probably this sort of size, we'd expect to pay about £12.99 for something like that. So quite happy to pay £2.99 or just under for the smaller plant and then help it to grow to its full potential. You may even be able to grow your plant collection for free by using plant swaps. You can find plant swap communities online or may even find some in your local area. We covered this in our first video on how to be more eco-friendly with your plant collecting. We'll link it at the end for you to check out. We hope you found this video useful in helping you to grow your plant collection for less. If you've got any questions, please put them in the comments below and we'll respond to everyone. If you'd like to see more content like this, then consider hitting the subscribe button. Thank you for watching Grow Your Wellbeing.